Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Back in 2015, AMD unveiled their revolutionary Radeon R9 Fury series. These new high-end graphics cards featured HBM or high bandwidth memory, which unlike traditional GDDR memory allowed for vertical stacking of memory chips. This not only resulted in dramatic increase to bandwidth, but also helped to reduce the overall size of cards. And last to arrive in the series was the R9 NANO. Just over 6 inches long and packing all the power of Fury X, AMD positioned Nano as the ultimate mini ITX card, so let's take a look at its specs. The R9 NANO released in August 2015 and cost $649 USD, precisely matching Fury and Fury X's price. The GPU was manufactured on a 28nm process and came with 4096 shading units. There's 4GB of HBM running at a rather slow 500 MHz, but it's using 4096-bit wide bus. Wow! Card supports DirectX 12 and operates 175W TDP, down from 275 of the Fury X. Okay then, let's take a closer look at this tiny card. Mine was made by PowerColor, and because AMD didn't allow third-party cooler designs, they all look the same and follow what AMD calls premium industrial design. Card feels premium and well put together and is really cool to touch. Because of the lower TDP, a single 8-pin power connector is all you need, and the card comes equipped with 3 DisplayPorts version 1.2 and a single HDMI 1.4 output. Popping Nano on a scale reveals it weighs just 607 grams. There are 13 screws at the back of the card that need removing, plus additional 2 at the I/O plate. Card did not put any fight, suggesting thermal paste must be more on the dry side. Then, just a fan header, and here it is. I mean, just look at it. Isn't it beautiful? Even though the card looked very clean on the outside, I had to deploy my special brush and remove a few of the dust balls that accumulated over the years. Then it was time to use isopropyl alcohol to remove all thermal paste and reveal what can only be described as the coolest and most amazing looking GPU core I've yet to see. And you do agree with me, right? See those 4 little squares along the GPU core? That is the high bandwidth memory. Lastly, I'm going to apply fresh MX4 and put the card back together and then move on to benchmarks. Synthetic benchmarks kicks off with 3D Mark TimeSpy. Nano scored nearly 5100 points, which makes it 12% faster over the RX 480, but slower by 22% over similarly priced GTX 980 Ti. Card pushed over 6800 points in Firestrike Extreme and increased its lead over the RX 480 to 16% and remained 22% slower than the 980 Ti. Up next, Heaven benchmark using ultra quality and extreme tessellation. R9 NANO scored just shy of 2200 points, leaving the RX 480 behind by 12%. The 980 Ti was significantly faster and ran away with almost 40% score advantage. Nano's reduced power consumption of 171 watts should help in the next test. Here, we look at the number of points scored in Heaven benchmark for every watt the GPU used. Nano managed 12.9 points, which is roughly 17% less than what both 980 Ti and RX 480 pushed. Back in 2015, R9 NANO would set you $649 USD. When we divide Heaven's benchmark score by the MSRP, Nano only delivered 3.4 points for every dollar we spent. This makes the GTX 980 Ti considerably better value, but the real star of the show is the Radeon RX 480, which scored 8.5 points. Lastly, let's look at the used market. Nanos are not commonly found at the time of writing this script, and there was just one on sale and listed for absurd $300. Last few sold on eBay around the $100 mark, so let's use that as a guide. Nano ranked pretty well in this test and scored 22 points for every dollar we spent. RX 480 is better by a hair, but the GTX 980 Ti remains the true king of second-hand value GPUs. This concludes synthetic benchmarks. Let's play some games. What makes Nano unique is unfortunately also its biggest weakness. Those 4GB of HBM are blazing fast, but not enough by today's standards, but since all of the game tests are done at 1080p, I think we should be fine. Forza Horizon 5 first. Utilizing medium preset, VRAM usage was above 3GB and Nano delivered smooth 76 FPS on average and very decent 1% lows at 57. That's a great start. Dying Light 2 is one of my latest game purchases and I look forward to properly getting dragged into its storyline. Despite using a very low preset, game looked really well. ISO 64 FPS on average and 1% lows were at 54. Also really nice to see is rather low VRAM usage at just around 1.5GB. Here we go again. GTA 4 usually runs like a pig, but not this time. I just had about enough of the status and finally followed a simple instruction which utilizes the XVK. Results? Take a look for yourself. It is not 100% perfect, but this has to be the smoothest I've seen it run for years. Finally. Game is fully maxed out but for the car density and ISO 103 FPS on average and 1% lows at 58. Alright, let's play some Red Dead Redemption 2. It never ceases to amaze me how beautiful the graphics in this game are. Game utilizes Vulkan and runs really smoothly. I'm using Balanced with 10 ticks from the left on the settings slider. I noticed a couple of dips here and there, but nothing game breaking, and Nano pushed 58 FPS on average and decent 1% lows at 45. This is without use of FSR. Such amazing little card. Next game tested was Resident Evil 3. Does anyone remember the 500% facial animation videos? No? Thanks to a demo that was available on Steam, I never owned this title. It's strange how my mind works at times. Game will allow you to really fine-tune your graphical settings and it's quite clear we could do with more VRAM, so for sake of simplicity, I went with a balanced preset, 1GB of VRAM allocation and no FSR, which used around 3.2GB. I then saw 113 FPS on average and excellent 1% lows at 74. Who doesn't like Titanfall 2? Game is full of action and there's just something about causing a rampage in a huge Titan. Game recommends Radeon RX 480 but had no trouble running maxed out graphics on this R9 NANO. With 92 FPS on average, one could almost think about stepping it up a notch to 1440p. I must admit it has been a while since the last time I jumped on Battlefield 5. High preset was no problem for the Nano, which pushed 97 FPS on average and rather mediocre 1% lows at 35, but being totally honest, I got pulled into action so much I never even noticed. Last game tested was GTA 5 because why the heck not? After learning that GTA 6 might not be out for PC for another 2 years, it's time to pop back on your Mark II. Not. I went for maximum eye candy with everything on very high. Nano did not disappoint and delivered 84 FPS on average with battery smooth 1% lows at 67. Okay then, let's wrap up. So, where do we go with this one? I absolutely admire AMD for taking the brave pill and committing to HBM. Extremely fast memory and power savings are nice to have, but as you've seen in those graphs earlier, Fury was priced to compete with Nvidia's flagship, the 980 Ti, but it didn't really. That being said, it still has more than enough power to play even modern titles, just keep in mind that there are better options out there. I can almost excuse all of that. It's so damn refreshing to hold it in hand, its small footprint, I can't think of any other card as such. Can you? Have you ever owned one of these? I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit the like button and you may also consider subscribing to my channel so you won't miss any future uploads. and I hope to see you all in the next one.